Welcome to the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay Dowd. My goal is to help train leaders and sales organizations how to manage and deliver results with empathy, compassion, and kindness. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I am very excited to bring you my guest today, Justin Janowski. He helped hundreds of coaches build their dream businesses from the ground up. Driven by his faith, he founded Faith to Influence to help people learn what it takes to turn coaching into a profitable business venture. Justin has guided Christian and non-Christian coaches alike through the rewarding process of optimizing business models, pricing, and sales strategies so that they can scale their income alongside their impact. He has a passion for sharing this process with emerging entrepreneurs to help them simplify and grow their businesses the right way. I couldn't think of a more appropriate conversation. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. I love having you. Could you do us the honor and give us a little bit of your background? Tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, my coaching, I really kind of got interested in coaching and business and entrepreneurship when I was 18. I sold Cutco kitchen knives in direct sales the summer after high school before college. And I loved it. I ended up doing that for several years. I got into business to business sales and financial planning after that. And through those experiences, I hired my first couple of coaches, Hal Elrod and then Ben Skemper. They were great coaches and mentors for me. And ultimately, at some point, I realized I wanted to be a coach. I remember being in a coaching community and recognizing this is what I'm meant to do. And I had a really distinct moment where I felt called to decision. I had been on a mastermind call with 6 other guys in this growing entrepreneurial business, and people were sharing about their truth and what they were meant to do on this call. And it got really emotional. It got really heavy. And I remember at the end of the call saying well, I don't have anything that I'm missing here, as people were sharing how they were maybe not living their fullest truth. I'm doing exactly what I was meant to be doing. And about 30 minutes after the call ended, I was walking down the hallway to my apartment. I felt like I got hit in the chest with the reality that I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing. And I was supposed to be a coach. And I called my mentor, my coach, and I explained what I was thinking and what was going on. And I felt like I was getting a message from God. And he said, well, he asked some questions, made sure that this was right and this was true. He said, if you're going to do this, when do you want to do it? And I said, now. And I went in and quit my job the next day. I told my boss, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, but I feel like I'm getting called into something else. This is my truth, was kind of the language I had around it. I'm meant to be a coach. And my boss was so mad. He swore, he dropped F-bombs. And this is a wonderful man. Honestly, It was a bad moment for him. I've never, in years of knowing him, seen him behave like this, but I caught him very off guard. And it was a very spur of the moment, impulse decision for me. And he told me to take the weekend to think about it. He said, you've got a great effing opportunity here. What are you thinking? Talk to some people. Think about this. This is insane. And I took the weekend and I came to the same decision. I said, I need to do this. And it was really scary, but it felt so right for me. And I know some entrepreneurs listening to this are you knew you were supposed to start your business, or you knew you were supposed to be an entrepreneur. You were called to something. And that was my experience with this. And so I ultimately quit my job. My older brother was living in Colorado at the time. He's in the military. He was stationed there with his family. He said, you can do that coaching thing from anywhere. Come live with us for free while you get started. We've got a guest room. And so I decided to leave my hometown, leave Wisconsin, go across the country to Colorado. And the company that was coaching me at the time and my mentor was in Denver. My brother was in Colorado Springs. And so I moved out there on a whim, and I thought it'd be a 3-month adventure and I'd be right back home because I never thought I'd leave Wisconsin. But during those 3 months, the company that was coaching me hired me to do sales for them. And that's what I coach people on now, is sales. But they said, we need help. Why don't you come sell for us? And during the same 3 months, I met my now wife, and we've got 2 little kids at home now. And all of that, what was interesting about the timeline of that, meeting her in those first 3 months, is during the same 3 months, at the end of that time period, my brother got shipped off to Germany. He got deployed, and my company that was in Denver decided to move out to San Francisco. And so had I not met Kara during that very short window of time, I would have either gone to San Francisco or gone back to Wisconsin. But I stayed in Colorado because I knew I had met my wife. And that bold journey led me to her. we got married and then moved out to San Francisco to join the company.
Mm.
And a few years after working with them, like I recognized again, one more calling, one more time. I was like, hit like really directly that I'm not doing the right thing for me.
Mm.
And I love the work we were doing at that business, but we had our first baby. We'd moved back to Colorado actually to raise our family. And at this point, my wife had left her job because I was earning enough with my startup company that started out paying me $1,000 a month, by the way. That was the salary that they offered me plus
Oh.
commissions. And for 3 months, I earned zero in commissions. Like it took me a
Wow.
while to figure out high ticket sales. But now I was earning 6-figure income with them and I could provide. And it was my second day back to work after 3 weeks of paternity leave that I recognized that I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing again. I had this another like message from God hit me in the chest, almost weak at the knees, like could not avoid it. And I called my wife. I said, I think I need to quit my job and start Faith to Influence, start my own coaching business. And I remember her crying. She's emotional. She's just had a baby. She's quit her job. She was a psychology teacher at the Air Force Academy, owned a house before I met her, very successful. And here I am, like crazy entrepreneur. I'm going to quit my 6-figure job to start this business. And I felt so convicted immediately, like the last time. In this case, we took a month and prayed about it and talked about it and thought about it. And there was a lot of emotion. And she's very supportive of me. And like we both came to the same decision that this is what I needed to do, was start my own business. And so a month later, quit that job, started
Oh
my
my
business.
God.
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
really scary.
Justin, that was a lot.
It's a
And I
lot. It's a
mean,
lot.
that's it's pretty impressive to have that courage to
Mm-hmm.
to really uproot everything you know and start something new. And I think part of what I think most people perceive with coaches, you have to have either some experience or some wisdom to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And there's you could swing a cat and hit a coach. Like there's a lot of coaches out
Mm-hmm.
there. So to take that leap, that's really, really hard. And
Yeah.
I had to imagine your wife was terrified.
Yeah.
So what was the beginning of Faith to Influence like in the
Yeah.
first few months? I mean, did you take your old clients with you or did you start from scratch? How did that go?
Well, I had been the salesperson at my former company, not the coach. I did end up having like some relationships, no doubt, that I like met through that experience. And I will say, like the 4 years I worked with them, I built my network. I developed my skill set. I developed my character. Like I learned a lot, and that was so valuable to me. And definitely some of those relationships ended up becoming clients at some point, with Faith to Influence in the future. But for me, I remember feeling really excited and really scared at the same time during those first few months. I remember tossing and turning, having some anxiety. Some nights it was hard to turn off my brain and go to sleep. And it was like excitement and fear feel so similar. And I
Yeah.
definitely had both simultaneously those first few months. And when I talked to my wife about this business idea, I'd had an entrepreneurial friend offer me a job twice, like in the previous year to making this decision. And I said, listen, if I can't prove this is going to be financially viable, this is going to work within 6 months, I will go back to this guy who I've turned down for a job twice and I will accept his job offer. Like I'm going to go work for him. So I knew where I was going to go next. I wasn't certain.
You
I
had a
wasn't
fail
burning my
safe.
boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that security, but I was just hoping like I could do $60,000 in business in my first year. Like,
Yeah.
could I just do enough to just make it for my family? And I was running a retreat 3 months into starting the business. I'd made a few one-on-one coaching clients, but I'd sold 8 men to come to this retreat. At the time, I was working with entrepreneurial men. Now I work with coaches, men and women. But at the time, I'd sold these 8 men. They'd all paid $1,000 to come to this retreat. And I was going to make my big signature offer, my mastermind offer at the retreat that was around $10,000 at the time. And I remember the day before the retreat just feeling like everything was going wrong.
Mm.
I woke up with a toothache that I never had before, and I haven't had after. Lyndsay, it was just that one day I had this
Yeah.
horrible toothache. I thought I'm not going to be able to drink water during this retreat. And I was struggling with like technology and the setup of the space. And I was getting something out of my garage, and a picture fell out of the rafters of my garage, hit me in the head, almost knocked me out.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, like it felt like everything was going wrong. And I remember being at the event space, and it was an Airbnb, and there was this living room. There were a couple of blue chairs. There were a couple of couches. It was kind of a half circle. And I was sitting in one of the blue chairs, having a really frustrating day and feeling a lot of self-doubt. And I closed my eyes and I kind of imagined the men sitting in the couches the next day, but I didn't imagine it in a positive way. I imagined them looking at me with disappointment in their eyes, like recognizing that we're in the middle of content, we're in the middle of the retreat, and like feeling that they wish that they weren't there, that they felt like they made a mistake, and like feeling like all the weakness and potential like failure of that event. And I cried in that chair thinking, maybe I can't do this.
Yeah.
And for me, like I had to ultimately surrender, and in my faith, like surrendering to God and saying, like, maybe I can't do this, but I've been called to this. And if I'm called to this, there must be a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to trust. And I stopped preparing. I stopped pouring over my notes. I went home with my wife and baby. We ate dinner. We watched a movie. We prayed. I went to sleep. And I woke up the next day and I just had like a blanket of confidence over me. And I felt totally different. I knew I could do it the next morning. It was so funny. I think when we're about to do something great, adversity strikes to test us right before. And you can call that a number of different things, but in some way, like when we're on the verge of something awesome, there are plenty of chances to turn back. And that was kind of mine. But I woke up that next day, I felt great. And the event went amazingly well. And 6 of the 8 joined my program. And we had over $100,000 booked by the end of that first retreat weekend, 2.5 months into running my business. And we did over 250 grand in collected revenue the first year, way beyond what I could have imagined, and have grown since then. But I felt so uncertain of myself, and I had so much self-doubt, but I had that like mustard seed of faith, a little bit of trust that I could do this, and like a willingness to say, this feels right, and I'm gonna go for it, even when it feels hard and scary. And I'm so grateful I did, obviously.
So let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about your process, because you obviously have really great sales skills. I speak sales. For the audience, what is that process? How do you go after it? And I know you also handle other people's sales. So talk about that.
Yes, I love sales. I'm that goofy guy who loves sales, because I know most coaches, most entrepreneurs, that's the part that they don't like. And I think the reason why people don't like it is because we've got old stories about what sales is. So part of what I help people with first is like mindset around sales. I recognize that like there's 3 pieces to our inner game, our mindset around sales. One is our identity and who we believe ourselves to be. I believe really empowering things about who I am now as a leader, as a coach, as a salesperson, and it makes it easier for me to sell. And even when I was talking about like feeling scared and self-doubt and like some of that negative self-talk or uncertainty, I had enough belief in my identity and who I was to carry me through, even when my identity was in progress. I think we all have like soundtracks that are running around in our head, as John Acuff calls it. And most of us, 90% of what we think today, we thought yesterday. Like we're creatures of habit. And so we need to change the soundtrack if our identity is not strong enough. And so I've been able to strengthen my identity. I've worked hard on it over the last few years. And I would encourage others to do the same. Like maybe it's just empowering I am statements. I am a great coach. I am a great leader. I am a great salesperson. And reminding ourselves of those things, surrounding ourselves with
Ted Lasso Believe sign.
Absolutely. My favorite show, Believe. Like we just need to remind ourselves and like put a new empowering soundtrack on. The second piece internally is our emotional state. I know when I'm going to speak, I'm going to deliver for a podcast episode like this, or get on a sales call or a coaching call, especially if I feel nervous, I need to focus on getting into a peak emotional state and feeling good. Because if I feel really good, I can overcome an identity in progress. And for me, that's like recognizing the emotions I feel when I'm at my best. For me, it's peace, love, confidence. If I can feel those things, I'm going to be great. And so the equation becomes, how do I feel those things? And I call it a pre-call ritual, but it's the things I do for like a couple of minutes right before I begin. And it might be, maybe it's standing up. I'm standing right now. It gives me a little bit more energy. For some people, it's sitting down to breathe or meditate. For some people, it might be a prayer or an affirmation. It could be some jumping jacks. It could be playing a song you like, dancing around the room. Whatever it is, we have to focus on getting ourselves feeling good. And like, if we feel good and we believe good things about ourselves, regardless of the structure of sales, we're going to get better sales results. And the third piece of this is your stories. What are your stories about what sales is, about what money is? Most people have disempowering stories about those two things. A lot of people think sales is pushy, or sales is greedy, or sales is manipulative, or sales is in some form bad. And if we think that, we're going to resist embracing it. And we're going to prevent ourselves. We're going to sabotage. We're not going to make sales if we think sales is bad, because we don't want to be bad. And so if we've got that old story, we might need to write it down, cross it out, write "not true" in big capital letters next to it, and maybe start to tell ourselves a more empowering story. And it doesn't matter what sales has been in movies, how it's been portrayed, or how other salespeople have treated us or our parents or whatever, wherever these stories came from. What matters is who we are as a salesperson. And so the new empowering story might be sales with me is something totally different. Sales with me can be service. Sales with me is love, leadership, coaching with an invitation at the end. I believe sales when done right is just making it easy for the right people to say yes. So those empowering stories make it easy for me to sell without resistance. And around money, a lot of people think like making money is evil or people who have a lot of money are bad. Like we've got weird stories about that stuff and it's just not true.
Yeah.
And what I believe is like, if you're good, like money magnifies who we already are. If you're a good, generous, high integrity person, I want you to have as much money as possible because that's where the money should be. That's the hands we want it in. And so I know that the more that I earn, the more I can give. And I want to earn as much as I can and give as much as I can. So I don't have any resistance around earning money. And that helps in sales. So I know like your question is like, how do I sell? But I just think that inner game, those pieces are so important to get right first.
It's all the preparation to be successful. And
yes.
Lord knows I've sold plenty of things I didn't believe in.
Right.
I mean, that's way harder than
Yes.
when you feel good about something. And certainly if it's your own product or your own service,
Yeah.
let's hope you feel good about that. But you talk a lot about self-sabotage. What are some of the things you see with that and how can people combat that? I mean, it kind of goes along with imposter syndrome, but would love your view.
Well, I think what people end up doing in self-sabotage is they show up in sales avoidance and showing up in like this like energy of wanting to avoid sales sabotages them in a number of ways. I mean, the first thing is like if we want to avoid sales, we're afraid of it. We're probably just not going to book calls. We're not going to get on sales calls. But if we want to be a coach or an entrepreneur and we want to build a successful and profitable business, we don't have a business until we make a sale. That's when it begins. And so that's the first part. And it's really obvious, but in less obvious ways, this shows up in people lacking transparency and feeling inauthentic because they're trying to avoid sales. An example of this would be like in multi-level marketing. Like I remember I met a couple, my wife and I did at a coffee shop, and they seemed really awesome. And they were new to the area. They wanted to meet us and get to know each other. And they invited us to lunch. And we thought it was just like, great, we're going to meet people. Sure. And it was social. And like our pre-frame of the conversation was that this was social. It was a chance to meet people. But at the end of the conversation, there was a sales pitch we weren't expecting. And so it felt like they were trying to be our friends the whole time. And then they had an ulterior motive. They knew about it the whole time. We didn't. It lacked transparency. It didn't feel good. They were probably avoiding sales. But sales feels good when it's transparent. And so like one of the things I know is like even when somebody lines up a sales call, sometimes people will like build rapport and small talk for 10, 20, 30 minutes before they even get to the actual point of the call. And it's insincere in a certain way, and it undervalues the point of the conversation in the first place. So for me, I want to get into rapport in like a minute. Like, hey, how are you? How's your day been so far? And then I want to meet them where they're at. And maybe they're asking how my day's been great. I'm really excited to talk to you. And then I want to transition to the pre-frame of what we're actually there for. And I want to be really transparent. I want to get consent to sell. And the way I pre-frame a conversation might be like, hey, John, thanks so much for taking the time to connect. I want to make the best use of your time and mine. So I'd just like to lay out a structure for this call. Would that be okay? Yes? Cool. The reason we're talking is Lyndsay tells me you're a great coach and entrepreneur, and I help coaches optimize their business model, pricing, and sales strategies so they can scale their income and their impact. My outcome on a call like this today would be to get to know you a bit and to discover whether or not it's a fit for us to work together. I'd like to get to that outcome by asking you some questions about where you're at in your business right now, what your vision for the future is, and what some of the challenges are that you're facing. From there, I'll give you some coaching perspective based on what I hear. And if it seems like a good fit, I'll explain specifically how I work with my clients. And then you and I can decide either to work together or not work together. And either way is fine. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Super transparent.
It does sound good. It's professional. It shows that I'm a leader. I've got a plan. Now my prospect can sit back and relax. The rest of the conversation, if we just do this pre-frame right and up front, becomes really natural, really easy. Then we just need to be a master of asking great questions and being curious about people and helping them solve problems and inviting them to a solution to solve the problem if we can help. But I think that transparency up front and consent to sell is so important. And people who are afraid of sales self-sabotage by lacking transparency because they want to pretend they're not there to sell because they're so afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so if we
I
get
think
over what that is, we can show up differently.
The sales stigma I always chuckle when people say, "Oh no, I couldn't be in sales." I'm like, "Hey, newsflash! If you're in business, you're in sales. You could
Yes.
be in marketing, you could be in accounting. If you're trying to
Yeah.
persuade someone to listen to you, you are in sales. If you're trying to get your kid
Mhm.
to eat their vegetables, you're in sales. So
Yes.
everyone's in sales to some degree, but when you can make it as authentic as possible, and you're
Mhm.
still you, you're not acting as some imposter who sells. You're just trying to provide your service. I like the way that you framed it, and it certainly isn't off-putting. It's not difficult for anybody to listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, you're always going to get the people that are like, don't sell me, and
Right.
you just gotta kind of roll with it and wait until they soften, and
Yeah.
you can bring them over. But I love
Yeah.
that. So one of the questions I always ask is, what inspires you?
I mean, I'm definitely really inspired by my family. I love my wife and my kids, and they're amazing, and they're really inspiring to me because I want to provide a great life for them. And I'm inspired by entrepreneurs who are overcomers. So it's cool to be on your podcast because you talk about really telling the story of people who are overcoming adversity, and those stories inspire me. And I just think it's super cool that we live in a place and in a time, and with the technology and everything, we're in different parts of the world connecting with each other. There's so much opportunity, and when people are willing to be bold and courageous and pursue that opportunity,
Yeah.
that inspires me. So I love being around entrepreneurs, and I love, of course, being able to support my family.
I love that. And another big question I always ask is, what would you like your legacy to be?
My faith is really important to me, so I want a legacy of that. Like, I oftentimes think about, most important, love God and love my neighbors. And if
Mhm.
I'm known for loving people well, that would be an incredible legacy to leave behind. And then additionally, I definitely want to give really significantly, and be generous in my community and the way I show up. And I love for faith to influence, for my business to outlive me and to continue to run. And I definitely want to bring great values and character and leadership to my children. And if they live really great lives and are great parents and spouses and neighbors and treat people the right way, that would be the most important legacy.
Well, my friend, you are on your way. You are doing all of the things. So I think just keep on doing what you're doing. And I love that everything you do is from your heart. And I just think it's such a great example of what I really push leaders to really listen to. And our leaders today have lost their heart, and companies especially are misguided with how leadership should be. And
Mm,
so you're a great example of the possible,
thank
and
you.
keep shining, because it's really important and we need more of it. So thank you. How do people find you?
Oh, yes. I would love to support people. If you're interested in getting better at sales, I've got a PDF that has our exact 10-step sales process in actual pretty great depth. It's like a book, a coach's playbook is what we call it. And you can get that at goodsalespdf.com. And that'll get you on our email list if you want to listen to our podcast or engage with us in any other way. Goodsalespdf.com.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's so helpful. I'm going to download it myself. I can always learn. I mean, you never stop learning. So
Yeah.
it has been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show, Justin. I appreciate all of your insight and certainly your heart. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. Thanks for listening to Heartbeat for Hire. If you like what you hear, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave a 5-star review. To keep the conversation going, you can find me on Insta or at LinkedIn at Lyndsay Dowd, H4H. Or you can reach me at my website, heartbeatforhire.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.